Let's talk about these new dietary guidelines for Americans. My name is Dr. Kashidi Long. I am a double board certified internal medicine and lifestyle medicine doctor. I am also a nutritionist, technically. My undergraduate degree was in nutritional science, so that is something I have always emphasized with my patients. So let's talk about these guidelines. I have a copy of them in front of me, and we're going to go through them together. So the first page is an upside down pyramid. That doesn't make any sense because if you want the healthiest foods to be the foundation of people's diets, foundations go at the bottom. I don't know why they put it upside down. Also on there, it looks like they want meats and animal products and fats to be a equal proportion of the diet as fruits and vegetables. And to me, that's flawed because the I don't want to say this, animal products are usually a mix of proteins and fats. And so when you mix those two together, it's going to be a higher calorie density. And so when you make that equal to fruits and vegetables, the caloric amount of it is not going to be equal. And so I think they're underemphasizing fruits and vegetables on this pyramid. And then they put whole grains at the very point of the pyramid, meaning that's what you're supposed to eat the least of. On the previous pyramid that we stopped using like a decade ago, whole grains were the bottom. Or it was supposed to be whole grains were the bottom. It just said grains. And that led to people eating a lot of like processed and refined foods. So I can see where they're going with it, but the way it looks on the pyramid is just weird because you have butter in the middle as if you're supposed to be eating more butter than whole grains. So yeah, it's just odd. Then on the second page is a letter that's supposedly from Secretary Kennedy, and it's talking about emphasizing real food and how they're making all these revolutionary changes, blah, 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 blah. It seems a little propaganda-ish just in the way that they're phrasing the content of this letter. So I'm going to skip over that. On the next page, first thing it says, eat the right amount of food for you. How are you supposed to know what the right amount of food is? Like they don't give any guidance on like a calorie range or this percent, that percent. Yeah, it's very vague, I think. It says the calories you need depend on your age, sex, height, weight, and level of physical activity. Pay attention to portion sizes. Hydration is key. Choose water, still or sparkling, and unsweetened beverages. So the hydration part, agree with. Pay attention to portion sizes. You can pay attention to your portion size and still eat a portion size that's too large. So I feel like that is not enough guidance. And then telling you that the calories you need depend on your age, sex, height, weight, and level of physical activity. Can we get a table or something to go along with that? And y'all have some suggestions for ranges of what people of certain heights, ages, sex, weight should be eating? I think that's too vague. Let's see. Prioritize protein foods at every meal. This to me sounds like propaganda or like the meat industry and the dairy industry and maybe even the farm lobby who grows those things had a heavy hand in writing this because nobody in America is protein deficient. So saying that people need to prioritize protein when they're already doing that is, and the suggestion that they should be doing it more is just very interesting to me because I've never had anybody who's not a vegan or a vegetarian have any type of like I've never been concerned that any of my patients are protein deficient. Like when I ask them what they eat, it's mostly meat. So where I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if they actually interact with healthcare. I don't know if the people who wrote these guidelines actually interact with real people or did any like dietary surveys about how much protein people were eating before they made these conclusions. So the new prioritize proteins at every meal goal says consume a variety of protein foods from animal sources, including eggs, poultry, seafood, and red meat, as well as a variety of plant protein, such as beans, peas, lentils, legumes, nuts, seeds, and soy. Consume meat with no or limited added sugars. Protein serving goals is 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Adjust as needed for your caloric intake. So, the specific inclusion of telling people to eat red meat, to me, that just smacks of like the beef lobby. I just think that we already know that increasing your red meat consumption or people who eat more red meat are at higher risk of colon cancer, which has been on the rise in the United States for years. And so I think that's a little bit of a suspect recommendation. I also am interested in knowing what data they are basing this 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight on, because previously I'm pretty sure it was like 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So they increased it by like 50 to 100%. So yeah, where are they getting that number from is something that I'm wondering. Because the usual review process and the body that they use to put together these recommendations, they didn't do that this time. You can read more about that somewhere else, but they use their own little board of people outside of the usual process. The next recommendation says consume dairy. I have a problem with this recommendation because I think it's highly biased and not culturally sensitive or inclusive because there's a lot of Black and Brown people who are highly sensitive to dairy in terms of being lactose intolerant, in terms of it causing like eczema or other allergy type reactions. And so, just this blanket consume dairy statement, I think the dairy lobby got to the panel or whoever put these recommendations together because not only does it say consume dairy, it says 3 servings a day. There is no adult on this earth that needs 3 servings of dairy a day. None at all. Yes, there can be some benefits to dairy. It has protein and vitamins. This says it has healthy fats. I don't know what healthy fats they're talking about. It has fat, but a good portion of the full fat dairy that they recommend is going to be your saturated fat, which in another section of this they say limit your saturated fat intake. So which one is it? You want me to eat full fat dairy 3 times a day, but you're also telling me to keep down my saturated fat. When if you did 3 times a day dairy, that would exceed the saturated fat recommendation. And then you also said eat like red meat, which is also high in saturated fat. So make up your mind. There is a little blurb on here about gut health and eating a variety of foods to feed the trillions of bacteria and microorganisms in your gut microbiome. Absolutely agree, 100%. They even included a little bit of a blurb on, it says fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, miso, high fiber foods. I absolutely agree with that statement. Let's see. The next one, eat fruits and vegetables throughout the day. Agree. There's no problem with that. Eat a variety of colorful, nutrient dense fruits and vegetables, frozen, dried, canned, or fresh. Make sure they have no or very limited added sugars. Um, I agree. I do think where it says vegetables 3 servings a day, fruits 2 servings a day, I think that could be higher. I feel like if for people to get the amount of fiber that they need, it probably should be like 4 or 5 vegetable servings and 2 to 3 fruit servings, but I'm not gonna nitpick on that. This section is relatively good. All right. Incorporate healthy fats. Healthy fats are plentiful in many whole foods, such as meats, there's that emphasis on meat again, poultry, eggs, omega 3 rich seafood, nuts, seeds, full fat dairy, again with the dairy, olives, and avocados. Um, I need them to explain a little bit more about these healthy fats that they want you to get from full fat dairy and meat. And then let's see, when cooking or adding fats to meal, prioritize oils with essential fatty acids such as olive oil. Other options can include butter and beef tallow. I just feel like, where are y'all getting this information from? Because butter and beef tallow are real heavy in the saturated fats category, which you said to limit in the others. Oh, here it is. In general, saturated fat consumption should not exceed 10% of total daily calories. They said eat full fat dairy 3 times a day. They also said eat meat with every meal. That doesn't align with limiting your fat consumption to 10% of total daily calories because fats are 9 calories per gram, whereas straight protein and carbs are 4 calories per gram. So this amount of fat is equal to this amount of protein and carbs. So the amount that they're emphasizing, eat more fat, is really mind blowing, especially since they told you to eat whatever amount of calories you wanted to that you felt like was right for your body. Next heading is focus on whole grains. Agree. We should not be eating all this processed refined grains, all these food like products that are made out of grains. So I think that that is very valid. Prioritize fiber rich whole grains, 2 to 4 servings a day, I think is valid. Reduce intake of highly processed refined carbohydrates such as white bread, ready to eat, or packaged breakfast options, flour tortillas, and crackers. Very valid. I don't have a problem with those recommendations. The next session is all about limit highly processed foods, added sugars, and refined carbohydrates. I think this is very legitimate. I think they should be telling you what the limit is, which they don't really do. Um, it's kind of leaning towards don't eat it. They do say that any snack or meal that you eat should not contain more than 10 grams of added sugars. But if you're one of those people who eats, you know, 5 or 6 meals a day, or 3 meals plus 2 snacks, and you eat 10 grams of added sugars with each of those, then it's going to be, 50 grams of sugar a day, which is more than the previous limitation said. So previously, I believe the dietary guidelines said no more than 25 grams of added sugar for women and 30 or 35 for men. And so I think they should have given like a total daily value of how much added sugar you can eat. But overall, just saying, encouraging people to limit all this processed food stuff, I think is fantastic. And then they do have a little blurb on added sugars and recognizing them in your foods, like the different names that they go by. I think that's very helpful to people. Limit alcoholic beverages is also another vague recommendation because you're not telling people what the limit is. It just says consume less alcohol for better overall health. Okay, like if you're an alcoholic and you are drinking 12 beers a day and you're like, okay, I'll limit it. I'm gonna go to 10. You're still an alcoholic. So they could have done better with that. And then there is a recommendation on sodium. I think this is about the same as previous. And another mention of limiting processed foods because they are high in sodium. The next section focuses on children. So I'm going to skip these pages because I'm an internist and I do not see children. So let somebody else do that part. Young adulthood, pregnant women. I don't really see pregnant women either. Uh, Lactating women talks about eating nutrient dense foods to boost milk production, make sure you're getting all your vitamins. That's valid. Older adults, some older adults need fewer calories, but still require equal or greater amounts of key nutrients. Yes, older people can sometimes get deficient in stuff, so I think that that is also valid. They should prioritize nutrient dense foods such as dairy, meats, seafood, eggs, legumes, and whole plant foods. The fact that dairy and meat is first in like all of these recommendations smacks of somebody paid them to say this. The way it's phrased, like this isn't alphabetical or anything. It's just like dairy, meat, eat the dairy in the meat, dairy in the meat, eat the dairy in the meat. So I feel like that part of these recommendations is definitely biased because why are you emphasizing it so hard? And then it says individuals with chronic disease following the dietary guidelines can help prevent and slow the onset of progression of chronic disease, specifically cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes. I don't know if these dietary guidelines are going to slow or prevent the progression of heart disease because you're telling people eat more fat. Eat, yeah. If you're telling people eat more fat and eat more calories, because the way they have presented these guidelines, you are going to be eating more calories, which means you are going to gain weight, which means like you're going to be more prone to heart disease and type 2 diabetes and obesity. So I don't think they made the right correlation there. Um, so, like I said, the guidelines are flawed. Like some stuff is really good, and then some stuff is like, I don't know if y'all connected all the dots right. Okay, so the section on vegans and vegetarians consume a variety of whole foods, especially protein rich foods such as dairy, again, eggs, beans, peas, lentils, legumes, nuts, seeds, tofu, tempeh. Significantly limit highly processed vegan or vegetarian foods that include added fat, sugar, salt. I do agree that some vegans and vegetarians are relying too much on overly processed foods, and so I think that's a valid statement. Um, Pay attention to nutritional gaps like vitamin D and E, choline, and iron. And then it also mentions vegan diets can fall short in vitamins A, D, E, B6, and B12. Actually, looking at this, so it low key feels like they're trying to put down the vegans. I'm not a vegan, but when you say in here, pay careful attention to nutritional gaps when consuming a vegetarian or vegan diet, because vegan diets show a broader shortfall in vitamins A, D, E, B6, B12, riboflavin, niacin, choline, calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, and protein. Monitor nutrient status periodically, especially for iron, B12, vitamin D, calcium, and iodine. That sounds suspect. It sounds like you're lobbying against veganism because every, regardless of what diet you eat, people are deficient in B12 and vitamin D nowadays because of the way industrial and factory farming are raising the animals. Iron, like whether you eat meat or not, you can be deficient in iron, especially for menstruating women. And then calcium, uh, no, why would they be deficient in calcium? There's plenty of plants that you can get calcium from, and iodine as well. Like, I'm not sure. where they're getting this stuff from. I'm sure they found a study, but the overall overarching studies on vegans and vegetarians says that their diets are generally healthier. Now there are junk food vegans and junk food vegetarians, but they generally have more balanced diets and get a range of foods. The statement that they're likely to be protein deficient is absolutely false. Nobody in America is protein deficient. Like there's protein in everything. Kwashiorkor is not happening over here. Like protein calorie malnutrition, unless you are literally not eating, not really going to happen. So there's definitely biases in these recommendations. Um, so yeah, it's just very interesting. All right, that was the last page. So let me know your thoughts on the new nutrition recommendations. What questions do you have based on this? Are you going to change anything based on these recommendations? I would love to hear from you guys.